Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Spiro. Since Yosei Teikoku is doing a self-cover of their 2005 album Stigma, can I request a reaction to the original versus new version of the title track? You sure can. That's what we're going to check out today. We're going to look at the original version of Stigma, and then we're going to look at the recast version of it. Now, what's really interesting, the timing of this could not have been better. Granted, the recast version of Stigma looks like it came out last month, but the recast album came out last Friday, like 4 days ago. So this is actually really good timing. Let's dive into this. See what Yosei Teikoku is bringing to the table today. So like a dance beat with some electronic warble, but then choir and violin. Driving guitar parts. Guitar slides and feedback over here. Rising power feels very strong here. Nice classical twist at the end of the chord progression. This is a fun track. It's interesting how much this bass kick influences the groove, despite the slight syncopation coming off the guitar part. Sort of scratching or something over here. It's very quiet. I do like the cymbal work in the center though. very interesting. Without the dance beat and really getting to focus on the melody and harmony, A lot of sorrow drenched in that. Something I didn't pick up on originally because so much of the experience is colored by energy and bounciness. Yeah, hearing how the violin parallels the vocals. Okay. That entire final chorus took on a different life, not because of anything the song did, but because of a recontextualization. Getting rid of the dancey elements and allowing me to just engage with the melody and harmony put me in a very different headspace. So much of this track just felt like dancey energy to me. I mean, you got the bass in the background, and it has a little bit of a phaser sound effect to it too, which is just a fun sound. And that's just hammering 4 on the floor the entire time. It tells you to just dance through this. You have a guitar over on the side. It is incredibly quiet. It has a little bit of syncopation to it. Again, positivity, bounciness, danciness. It's got groove. But then there's also a synth that shows up over here, and for all I know, maybe it is the guitar too, and it's just kind of a swirling array of like phasery sounds. I don't even hear specific pitches, I just hear a lot of movement. In a sense, it almost comes across as noise, but if it were louder, maybe definitely, it's just a really quiet, cool idea going on over here. And then you have the vocals, which are bright. They're higher pitched, which sounds like there's levity to them, but the vocalist timbre is also very bright and colorful as well. There is a positive energy coming out of that. And so all of this combined really told me, hey, dude, you're just here to have fun, right? Follow the beat, dance with it, groove, you're good to go. But getting rid of all those elements and really getting to focus on the melody and the chord progression, I picked up on that more Baroque style turn at the end of the chorus, but I didn't really pick up on the emotive quality of it. It's kind of a secondary element to my first time listening to this. Something tells me that this is something that would pop up eventually. If I hadn't picked it up here, I would have picked it up eventually on a subsequent listen, simply because the harmony is a big component of the song. It just never quite cracked the surface for me, given how many other components are more dominant in the mix and kind of coloring of a specific experience here. But certainly that lead up into the final chorus, just getting to hear the melody, just getting to hear the chords, and it is just, it's, I don't know the good word for it. I was going to say it's dripping with melancholy, but that's not true. And I was going to say it's tinged with some sorrow, but I don't think that's true either. A tinge would be a small component of it, whereas drenched would be a large component. I don't think it's either. I think it's closer to the middle. I don't think the song has joy, but I do think there is a bittersweet component going on here. And I think that makes the sorrow, interestingly, more dominant in the sounds. Because the sorrow is here that contrasts with some of those brighter timbres, with some of those brighter melodic moments, it really makes the darker parts, the more sorrowful elements, stand out when I'm listening to them. And the more that I listened to that final chorus, kind of trying to phase out all of the electronic dance bits and focus on just what the emotion of this song is from a compositional standpoint rather than a production one, I bring the violin in from the side. I listen to the vocal melody. I listen to the chords being presented. It's just incredibly sorrowful. And I don't think that it's dominated by sadness. It's just that when you contrast it, the sadness gets elevated. And I found that I didn't really want to dance as much in those final 40 seconds or so. Listening to the vocals and the violin dance around each other, both of them representing this sadness, but presenting it in a bright way. I don't know. It started to hit me, and the turn, that final chord, that I don't know, complicates everything. It just hits harder. It's like a well being dug. Very, very interesting recontextualization there. And again, it's not nothing the music did. It's not like the music changed chords, changed keys. It's not like it brought in new instruments. It just simply gave me a moment to understand what's happening and then put me back into the old idea with this new information. And I think when I hear all of this, surrounded by all of this noise, electronic beats, all of this layering and just energy, it's really interesting to hear something lower energy, personal, and vulnerable, surrounded by all of this, I don't know, candy, ear candy, just all this stuff that makes you feel good. These types of beats get my adrenaline going. I want to get on the dance floor. Vulnerability surrounded by bravado. That's what I get out of this track. I find that really interesting. The way it's presented. Usually I'd hear something like that done harmonically, trying to mix emotional keys or chord progressions in order to create this composite feeling. Here, though, it's sort of composition versus production. Speaking about that production, though, there's parts of this that I like. There's some cool sounds going on. I love all the phaser effects going on in this track. I'm a big sucker for that. But the balance is rough, and I kind of expected that coming into this. You see, a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember if it was a February or a January live stream, but we did kind of do what we're doing today. We checked out two Yosei Teikoku tracks, one from probably Stigma and one that was a recast, the remake of it. I can't remember what the track is, but if you're interested, the live stream will be up there and you'll be able to find timestamps in the description box for this specific segment. Two people, though, requested the same song, the original versus the remake. And this was one of the things that I picked up on in that, was that the original production was just kind of odd. It's an eclectic mix of rock or metal ideas. There's definitely some drum work in here. There's guitars, there's vocals that kind of fit into that pop rock realm. But all of this is sort of de-emphasized for the electronic leaning ideas, such as the 4 on the floor, such as the synths dominating everything else. The violin. A violin and choir also were present, I believe, on the other track. It's been a couple of weeks, but I'm pretty sure we had at least the choir and something else. Another string, might not have been a violin. So parts of this are kind of familiar to me. And a lot of my issues with that are present here as well. This definitely just seems like the way they wanted to, or the way they ended up producing this album, which is full of, I don't know if I can call them missteps, because it certainly creates a unique identity, and it may be that this is the exact outcome they wanted. But for me personally, it feels disjointed. There's not a balance in the production to this. And if I had heard this song in isolation, I might have tried to read something into that. But having heard the other track, it just seems like who they were at the time, or the outcome of this production session. and I don't think there's much to read into there. However, there is one really interesting idea here. It's the choir. It's an electronic choir, much like everything in here. I think the guitar would be the only thing that isn't electronic, but Yousei Teikoku fans, go ahead and correct me on that if I'm wrong. The choir presents a really interesting component to this. Like I mentioned, the violin pairs well with the vocals to further the emotional element. The drums and bass sound, maybe probably a synth there, help create this grounded 4-on-the-floor rhythm. It keeps you rooted, never allows the song to float away, but it demands dancing. 4-on-the-floor just does that. The guitar and whatever synth over here, they're just kind of doing their own thing most of the time. They're too quiet to really worry about too often. But there's the choir, and where do they fit into all of this? And I found this interesting because for 4 minutes of this track, I had no idea. I was like, well, it's a cool sound. They got some strings in here, so it just kind of gives it more of that, heightened feeling. The string brings in a little bit of classical element. You have that classical harmonic turn in there, so there's some elegance there. Might as well just throw in a choir too. That's elegant. But I think it's more than that, particularly because by the end of the track, when I felt this idea of the vocals, the violin, the chord progression being a bit more vulnerable, having this sorrow introduced or present, and I just realized it here at the end. In the song, the choir spatially is outside of that. But unlike the electronic components of this track that feel secondary, like there's a barrier between this more vulnerable interior and then the bravado of the exterior, the choir kind of sits between that. They seem to be aware of this vulnerability, and because of the lower tones of the choir, and for whatever reason, just the way that they sound, granted, I think it's a digital choir, so like how these words are being said, probably they didn't have a lot of control over that. But there feels, and maybe I'm being a little influenced by the title being Stigma, but they feel condemning. For most of this track, I couldn't place them, and in the final minute of the song, it felt like they were pointing fingers somewhere, and I can only assume it would be at this vulnerable center here. And I think this was the final piece that really caused me to stop enjoying the song on like that surface level, just kind of bobbing my head with it. Like dude, it's just catchy, right? And just, I'm feeling it. And I don't want to dance to this anymore. Something about it just feels heavy. And I think it's a culmination of everything. It is the vulnerable center. It is the sound on the outside that feels dispassionate towards what's in the middle, or maybe as a barrier to protect what's in the middle. But there is the choir too. And they feel quite a bit more aware than the rest of the exterior of this song. All right. I've been trying to figure out if I want to do lyrics first. I think historically I have done that. Yeah, we'll just go with that then. I'm going to look at some lyrics for Stigma, and then we'll look at the recast version. All right. This track seems to be about a narrator who feels connected to someone else and enjoys their company so much that they would fight with all of the strength that they have in order to protect this other person. This is all pretty clearly stated in the chorus. It says, "The flames dance and dress the sword that wields in the sky. If you have the strength that you will not shake off our bound destiny, there is a stigma that is engraved on our bodies, but despite that, the most important thing for me is to believe in your feelings. I want to protect you." This idea that belief in this relationship, this friendship that we have, whatever it is, that the belief in that is enough strength for me personally, the narrator, to forget about any stigma that either of us might have, or maybe it's the stigma of the friendship, I'm not sure, and that we will fight through that for each other to protect each other, or at least the narrator will fight through that to protect the other person. It talks about destiny trying to separate them, calling it a melody through a ghost corridor that has repeatedly separated them. It is woven by the domination of the deep darkness, that there is some greater force trying to keep our narrator from this other person, and that they will fight with the forces of light in order to find this other person, connect with them, and protect them. That's what this song is about. It says, even through the pain that is engraved on our body, the pain that is etched into our heart, we should transform it into strength until you reach the end of the day. That's a pretty powerful track. What's interesting is I don't really hear too much of that melancholy in here. There's a little bit of a situation that our narrator isn't happy with. There is distance between them and whoever they care about. But this entire song is triumphant. It is about overcoming these odds to get what the narrator wants. There is a little bit of sadness, I suppose, in the first pre-chorus. It says, why are there these conflicts? Why do we fight? Our lives are much more valuable, and the only thing I want is to not lose you. Yeah, there's some discontent here, but sorrow? I don't know. I find it really interesting. This track is incredibly vulnerable, though, and I think that does line up with some of the ways I described the song itself. The dance part, I don't see any correlation here, though. It might just be the kind of music they wanted to make at the time. But yeah, very cool track here. And, you know, reading these lyrics, I'd say fairly powerful as well. Let's dive into the next one then. This is going to be the modern version of Stigma. Let's see how they reinterpreted it for 2026. Alright, it's metal coded now, that's a big difference. A little bit of chip to it. Yeah, a 4-4 with a triplet over 3 and 4. Still very uplifting and powerful. This is what I talked about in the first one too. Okay, that's a nice throwback idea. still has the phaser sound on it. I love the slow ramping up of the time feeling. Rising energy, dude. Oh, this drum part. That's a fun ending. Yeah, the first thing that really stands out to me is how much more expressive this can be rhythmically because of the detachment from the quarter note. We did see a little bit of expressive drum work, particularly with cymbals on the original, but I feel like the drummer is a larger part of the equation here as far as storytelling. Now, this isn't a complete movement away from the original idea. We do have a 4 on the floor in a part of the chorus, which I think is pretty cool. And it is all bass kicked. And during the second verse, we did have the phasery bass kick that was very reminiscent of the original version. So there are a couple of ideas here that still tie it back to that. But on the whole, the drummer is way more expressive, more syncopation coming in here, more varied rhythmic styles, more varied time feels, and I think this is really important. The varied time feels allow the song to evolve rhythmically without depending on other instruments. Our home pulse for the song is also the one that gives us the variation for temporal energy. This track feels like it is driving at points. It feels like it pulls it back in a little bit, and it feels like through the pre-chorus and into the chorus, a gradual ramping up of energy that pairs phenomenally well with the escalating emotion from the harmonic side of things. I think this is probably my favorite part of this version. And despite it being totally different, it's probably the reason I would come back to it the most often, is just the way that the time feel grows and shrinks with the harmonic elements. There's a really great synergy there that I think sells some of these moments better than the original ever could because of that dance beat in the background. Now, another really big change here. You probably picked up on it. This is not an electronic song. This is fairly metal coated. We kick it off with guitars, there's a bass, we have a full drum kit here, and they dominate a majority of the song. We have some crazy riffs going on. I feel like the guitar part is fairly different from at least what I thought was a guitar on the first track, which I'm not sure. Some of y'all are gonna have to inform me. I think that Yosei Teikoku originally had a guitarist on that original Stigma album, but I'm not so sure. The more I say it, the less sure I am of it. Regardless, there was a guitar sound over here, and it was kind of secondary to the music, kind of quiet, shoved into the corner. Like, yeah, you can play guitar on this song, but you know, we're making a dance song here. If you do anything crazy, we're just gonna mute you. So that's what it kind of feels like. And here the guitar is present, it's centered, it's focused. They're proud of the guitar work. We have an entire guitar solo, very traditional metal style solo there in the bridge. This is a metal song through and through. And what's really interesting is that it doesn't really change much. At least not in the way I understand the track. Some of the riffs are evolved, sure, but the overall energy of the track hasn't really changed much at all. And I think that says a lot about how strong their composition is, that even within the grouping of a different sound of instruments with a totally different timbre. Well, I guess it's not totally different. We did have a drum kit and a guitar last time around. They were just de-emphasized in the mix. But here there's almost no electronic components at all. That even in the groupings of a new timbre, a new set of instruments, it's undeniably still Stigma. And I really appreciate that, because that means that there's a strength of identity to the composition itself. However, there is a lot of throwback on this as well. I already mentioned that the drummer does give us a 4 on the floor in a couple of places here, and that the second verse did give us the phasery bass kick. But we also heard the guitar doing some swirly phasery stuff at one point as well. We have the choir coming back in. The violin wasn't present for a lot of this, but we did hear it a little bit, particularly at the beginning of the song. There seems to be a lot of subtle nods towards the ideas of the original, even though most of them didn't make it over in the entirety. Given that the guitar is now the dominant secondary instrument to the vocals, and it has new riffs as far as I can tell. We have bass in here, which I don't think the original had a bass guitar, and the percussive part is massively expanded. So a lot of the older ideas don't need to be here, or couldn't really be here, because it would be a cluttered mess as it tries to compete with the new ideas that are presented. But I do love how there's these little nods, subtle gestures to, hey, remember this part from the last song? Little Easter eggs thrown in. And it almost becomes a little bit of a hunt. Speaking of Easter eggs, it's like, oh yeah, that was the part from the last song. And I think that's kind of cool, because you know, it creates this conversation where this isn't just a total reimagination. It is in conversation with the original. The vocals are, as far as I could tell, I had the lyrics pulled up and I was trying to follow along with the Romaji. And I think the lyrics are identical, at least for the few passages I was looking at. But the melodies are different in places, similar in others. There's a different type of emphasis or vocal delivery. Part of that may just be the 20 years. I think, when did Stigma come out? Yeah, 2005, and this is 2026. So the 20 years of the vocalist aging, you know, 20 years is a long time. Our voices change over 2 decades. But also the confidence or technique that gets developed over that time as well. And I feel like this one does feel like a more mature, varied delivery of these lines, but also the melodic flow is different. There are some passages that are similar, some that are different. There's, like, every instrument is doing these subtle nods to how things used to be, while also incorporating the new ways here. And I just think that's a very cool way to go about doing this. You don't hear too often of musicians remaking old music. I think it's becoming a bit more common these days for some reason. But I think like the only time I ever heard that growing up, I mean, electronic music has remixes, but that's usually done by other artists. The only time I really heard that too much in my circles were, you know, the acoustic, the unplugged versions of a rock song. The idea of making a new version of your own stuff is interesting in and of itself, but I feel like too often there is a push to be totally unique, to completely redefine the song. Like when we checked out Aha's Take on Me, and the version that they did for MTV, I think it was just recently, I think it was like 2019 or so, that they released a new version that was just wildly different. And I love how this feels both fresh and old. It is definitely a totally new version that I think 100% justifies re-releasing this album with new things. But it also doesn't forget where it came from. And I think that's very cool. This song, or this version though, does do one thing better. I think it loses a bit of the vulnerability. A lot of that came from the production and compositional separation between the melody and the dance parts. Here, everything is a bit more unified and balanced. But I will say that the drums adding into the chorus, the time feel acceleration, but also the strength and power of the guitars pulling these chords through the chorus, and the vocals further experience and growth as a vocalist. All of this comes through and really shines a light on something I had brought up at the first chorus of the original, but kind of forgot was a part of the song until now: the strength of the chorus. I still feel a little bit of that melancholy, and I still don't understand where that fits into the song, other than the fact that there's some discontent with the situation and wanting to make amends. But hearing the strength rise up out of that chorus into this massive moment at the end, not both delivered by the vocals, by the shifting drums, by the strength and power of our guitars with these chords, it really sells this idea. Maybe it is that I know the lyrics now, and I know they are about finding strength to fight for what you want. But I feel that more here than I did in the first track. And it is a consistent part of this one. And I think this kind of bleeds over into the guitar solo as well, which feels... it gets the job done. I don't think there was much in there that really elevated it in the sense that, the song would have been totally different if it had been removed. But I think it does a great job of expanding on the concept and extending it out. Looking at a brand new melody that also evokes strength within a new timbre that is powerful and slicing it like a good solo guitar tone should do. It pierces through the entire mix and comes out the other side in the spotlight, ready to be heard. And more so than most tracks, the guitar solo, while it feels mostly functional here, completely lines up with the themes in a way that would have really made me miss not having a solo if they opted to not go for one. The idea of being present and pushing past noise to do what you think is right and be in the limelight, especially with that verbiage that I typically use of tones cutting through the sound in order to be at the forefront. I mean, the idea of a sword pops up so many times in this track, and using it to fight for what you want, it's just... it is really good synergy there. And the soloist got to show off a little bit too. I didn't get to get a good read on how the Yosei solo guitarist plays based off of the original track. It was sort of a secondary component to the song in every element, production and composition. But here, forefront of the track as far as harmony goes, got to hear the riffage, and we got to hear their melody writing. So I think it's both functional and thematic simultaneously. Very well done. Yeah, I might have to check this out. I didn't know that this was coming out now. Honestly, I thought this album was already out. I thought this whole recast thing was actually something previous that they had done. I didn't realize it was so new, but I think I might have to check out this album. If you're a fan of this group, should I listen to the original Stigma first? Or now having heard 2 songs from it, do I have a pretty good gist of what they're doing? Is there anything that's going to surprise me if I already understand that it's kind of dancey music with some rock components, but they're not too dominant? Or should I just dive right into Recast? These, however, are my thoughts on Yosei Teikoku's Stigma and Stigma Recast. What did you think of these tracks? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this song? Let me know. Add all of that, as well as anything else you'd like to, into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.